Hello again to all of you wonderful people at home. We don't know 99.9% of you personally, but we appreciate the hell out of you. She's Jessie, I'm Emerson. We host this show. It's called The Sweat.
And fun fact, download the DK Live app for free.
What?
And you can watch us every night at 6 o'clock Eastern. Plus, get even more expert analysis and play-by-play updates for your lineups during games in every sport so that you don't miss a thing.
Maybe you're watching us on it right now.
Ooh.
Who knows? But retweet and fave everything you just said. Speaking of faves, here's three of mine. DK Live's Reed Fowler, Steve Buchanan, and Ian Hartitz of the Action Network, who I just followed on Twitter, and he has yet to follow me back. He is the new Adam Kaufman, Steve.
You guys and your Twitter followings, you make up our NFL panel tonight, and we're starting the show by putting a fantasy spin on some of the league's biggest storylines. Drew Brees and the Saints barely pulled off a win last night over the Panthers. Brees put up less than 7 DK fantasy points. So are you trusting him to get back on track next week against the Steelers, Steve?
I mean, look, it's not like Brees has been lighting it up to begin with over the last 4 games. He's averaging just 175 passing yards in that span, less than 2 passing touchdowns in those games as well per game there. But in the same breath, I mean, how efficient is this running game going to be against the Steelers' defense? They've been really good in that aspect of the game, so this might end up being a game where they really have to rely on Brees more than they've had to over the past few games here. I will say one thing, though. His salary for this week is insanely high for the lack of production that he's had as of late. He's the 3rd highest priced quarterback. I think that's absolutely nuts. For me, that regulates him just to GPPs this week, and really rightfully so. Even if he's a little bit cheaper, I'd feel the same way. But 6,500, that is so insane for somebody that's barely topping 200 passing yards as of late. So it could be a spot where he can bounce back, but man, you just don't feel good about it.
Ian, do you feel good about this? He's pricey. He got less than 7 DK fantasy points the last time out. So would you be willing to pay up for him this week?
Yeah, I'm for it. I mean, look, it was a tough matchup last week in the sense that we know the Saints offense when they're not in the Superdome. I mean, they have problems. They're not averaging 30 points per game, kind of like we're used to. So this week we're back to seeing the Saints, having the highest implied over/under. And the big thing, I mean, like Steve mentioned, this has kind of been more of a run-heavy offense, especially since they got Mark Ingram back. But I mean, they might not be able to do that against Pittsburgh, 1, and 2. Pittsburgh actually has an offense to make Drew Brees keep throwing and kind of keep him in this game. So I don't think this will be a situation where the Saints are just able to kind of run the ball out. And with that said, I mean, even though Joe Hayden and those guys have been playing some good football, Drew Brees still having, best season of his career, and I like his chances at bouncing back here.
Reed, how do you feel about Brees this week?
Yeah, I mean, Brees, like we all talked about it, we see it, right? I mean, on the road and at home, his splits are pretty bad. If you just look at yards per completion, it's 3 more yards at home at 12.5, and on the road, it's about 9, right? The last 3 against Dallas, Tampa Bay, and his most recent one, Carolina, the guy's below 10 in terms of yards per completion. That really hurts, obviously, especially when you have that run game that is being utilized a lot more. I will say this, though, the Steelers outside of like Baltimore and some of these other teams in terms of what they've given up, then just really outside of like Lamar Jackson, they're giving up about 21 DK fantasy points to the more conventional quarterbacks, right? So if you want to say bounce back where he gets you about 15 DK fantasy points, which for Drew Brees is kind of underperforming, I would say he bounces back in that sense. But like Steve mentioned, as the 3rd highest, I'm not touching him at that price tag.
Andrew Barnett chiming in on Facebook saying, terrible choice I made picking Brees as captain last night. But you were not alone, young man. You were not alone.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the Panthers' offense was non-existent outside of Christian McCaffrey. Cam Newton sharing after the game that he's still dealing with a stiff, sore shoulder, has not fully recovered from the surgery he had 2 years ago in 2016. So that being said, hasn't been awful for the most part this season, averaging 22 fantasy points per game. How do you see him bouncing back next week against the Falcons, Reed?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really see it. I mean, outside now they don't have any playoff hopes, especially with that loss last night. Look at the last 3 games; he's averaging only 10.3. I know in terms of the full season, he's got a good record. And really, if you look at his first 7 games to the last about 4 or 5, it's been really, really bad. And we know what shoulder injuries do to really good quarterbacks. Look what happened to Andrew Luck, right? He was out for a better part of a year or a season and a half. And now finally he's back at full health and he's doing what he can, and he's one of the better quarterbacks in this league. When you look at Cam Newton, right, it's just, especially with the red zone, right, where his ceiling has been extremely high in a lot of places where he's getting red zone opportunities. Over the last 3 games, their red zone opportunities have decreased 20%. And so this guy is not really featured in the red zone because they're not getting there. And furthermore, the guy that you're probably playing or probably want to feature, especially if you want to rest that shoulder, is Christian McCaffrey. Falcons a little bit better against the run as of late. So I think he's going to be in line for a ton of usage. So in terms of thinking he bounces back, I don't see it.
What do you see, Ian? Do you see him bouncing back? He's had 2 straight games with less than 12 DK fantasy points.
First thing, man, I got your follow back just now. So
hey,
there it is. Christmas
for,
coming early.
As for Cam, though, look, the only good thing he's got going for him is the Falcons have allowed the 2nd most rushing yards to QBs this season. But I mean, can they just please put this guy on the sideline? He's your franchise quarterback. The Panthers have a 0.9% chance of making the playoffs, and Ron Rivera is basically just trying to save his job by putting Cam out in harm's way. I mean, Roto-World's Josh Norris had a really good stat. Only one of Cam's pass attempts Monday night went over 15 yards downfield. We saw a couple weeks ago, Taylor Henneke had to come in to throw the Hail Mary. I mean, the shoulder is clearly affecting like what he's able to do on the field. So I don't know why they're trying to do this to their franchise guy, but yeah, fantasy guys stay away from it. And like Reed said, McCaffrey should be the guy to benefit from all this. Maybe we'll even see him keep throwing.
Steve, how do we feel about Cam Newton at home against Atlanta on Sunday afternoon?
You know, if they had won 5 in a row, I'm sure he wouldn't be hearing anything about that shoulder. But, you know, how convenient, lose 5 in a row, now his shoulder hurts. I mean, look, to be honest, like, he looks like he's in pain. He really is in pain, or he's just a really good actor. One, you know, both could be possible. And it's too bad, though, because he honestly has one of the best matchups on the slate, which is certainly disappointing because this would be a great bounce-back spot for him. We've already seen him post 31.6 DK fantasy points earlier in the season, throwing for 333 yards with 3 touchdowns. But now he's gone on with 2 games without throwing a touchdown. I mean, he's just not hitting his guys right now. I think his longest completion, I think you mentioned, was just like 22 yards or something like that. Like, just something so obscure, just something not like him. He's definitely injured. You know, it's official now at this point. So, you know, like Ian was saying, like, what are they even running him out there for at this point? It doesn't even matter. So whoever ends up going in his spot, if they do change him, in a pretty good spot here, will probably be cheap, but it's just so hard to trust him. It's just not even worth it at this juncture, especially at 6,200.
Ian, most people's season-long leagues will come to an end this week.
Yeah.
And if you're in that championship matchup and need somebody off the waiver wire, like who's your top choice, any position will work here.
I think it's Elijah McGuire with the Jets. He's still under 33.5% of ESPN leagues. I was kind of surprised, but he's had 20 and 21 touches over these last 2 weeks with Isaiah Crowell, you know, done for the season with this foot injury, playing 75% of the snaps. So Trenton Cannon's still a little bit involved, but this is really the first time we've seen a Jets running back have a 3-down role in a while. And with that said, now they get a home matchup versus a Packers team that is, you know, basically has every reason to quit on the season at this point. So a good matchup and a 3-down workload for basically free. So go ahead and take them.
Reed, I saw you nodding. You like that pick?
Yeah, I like it a lot. I mean, there's one off the wall, one that I really like. If you're one of those deeper leagues, Royce Freeman hasn't seen less than 8 touches, I think, over the last few games, and he gets an Oakland team, obviously giving up a ton of points and yards to opposing running backs. Even though Philip Lindsay is the guy, Freeman is still, he obviously gets the red zone touches. He's still featured in that offense. And Jamal Williams, right? Aaron Jones was put on the IR. If the Packers don't rest Rodgers, he's a volume-based RB2. Go pick him up.
And Steve, what about you? Who are you looking at?
I think it's going to be John Kelly. I mean, we have to monitor how much Gurley is and how he's practicing during the week. I mean, look, the Rams open up as massive favorites against the Cardinals, one of the worst run defenses in the league, and Gurley's injured at this point. I mean, what's the point of running him out there if really have nothing to play for? And if you just to embarrass his team, fine, do it with Kelly, a guy who's, you know, 4th-string quarterback or running back. I mean, I think it's just worth grabbing him just in case, because it would be an absolute cake matchup if he ends up starting here. Even if Gurley is active in this game, how much are they really going to need him in this game to run? So I feel like in a championship week, it's kind of dicey to have, you know, throw somebody in your lineup that technically might not even be starting. But, you know, Sean McVay's not stupid. He's going to need Gurley in the playoffs here. Why run him out against the hapless Cardinals at this juncture? So I think he's an interesting pickup this week.
Alrighty, great advice by all 3 of you. We will chase or fade some game spreads with you guys coming up right after NBA Pick and Roll.
I'm Carolyn Azak, in with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. Well, the Green Bay Packers have been eliminated from playoff contention following their loss to the Chicago Bears. So now the question is, will Aaron Rodgers take a seat for the rest of the season? Being eliminated from the playoffs might not be his reason for sitting out, but an injury could be. Rodgers suffered a groin injury on the final play of the first half against Chicago, and it seemed to affect his play for the rest of the game. Rodgers finished with 275 passing yards, but no touchdowns and 1 interception. Admitting after the game, it bothered me a little bit. On top of his latest ailment, Rodgers has been dealing with a knee issue all year. Interim coach Joe Philbin expects number 12 to play if he's healthy, but management could overrule that in order to protect the $134 million quarterback from further injury. Deshaun Kaiser would be in line for a start if Rodgers does in fact sit this one out. The Packers QB has only eclipsed 20 DK fantasy points twice in the last 8 weeks, so even if he does play, you might want to stay away from him in your fantasy lineups.
Well, if it isn't time to pick and roll with our NBA panel on this delightful Tuesday.
Oh, please
Oh
don't.
my God. We've got our DFS expert, Jeff Eisendan, and RotoWire's Nick Whalen here to do the hard work for us.
That's because we just ask the questions. You guys have to provide the educated answer. So, on that note, let's take a look at this 4-game slate. LeBron is the highest priced player at 10-6, which is $800 more than John Wall. Do you think King James is the better play, Jeff, or do you want to save 800 smackers and play wall ball?
I just think that this is a pretty weak slate tonight, so I'm going with LeBron James. I'm willing to spend that extra $800. I mean, you know, they're just there is no more reliable player, it feels like, in daily fantasy than LeBron James, even though he's coming off a bit of a weak performance actually against John Wall's Wizards, I believe, in his last game. But then he's got the Nets tonight. I'm in New York. You know, LeBron shows up for the bright lights all the time, so I'm spending that extra money to take a reliable LeBron James.
All right, Nick. Jeff doesn't really like the slate. It's small. It's only 4 games. You got to get creative here. So do you drop the change for LeBron?
Yeah, I do like LeBron tonight. Like you said, LeBron does always seem to play well in Brooklyn, always seems to play well in New York in general. But I think for contrarian's sake, I'll go with John Wall here and save the $800. He's coming off a huge game against James and the Lakers over the weekend, almost 80 fantasy points in 42 minutes in that game. He's played 41, 35, and 42 minutes over his last 3 games. The Wizards really have no depth. They haven't had depth in a while, but especially at the point guard position, it's been an issue. You know, and this team just gave up a ton of fantasy points to D'Angelo Russell just a couple of days ago. The Hawks don't really have the luxury of hiding Trae Young on defense with another good guard in Brad Beal in this Wizards backcourt. So it'll be interesting to see how they hide one of the worst defenders in the league. And Wall didn't play when these teams met earlier in the month, and Washington still put up 131 points in that game. He seems to kind of be in a groove right now. The Wizards have been playing a ton of high-scoring games of late. I think this is probably another track meet, so give me Wall at 9,800.
Guys, Victor Oladipo is coming off a 57-point performance against the Knicks. He'll run you 9-1 against the Cavs tonight, or you could save some cashish and go with Trae Young, who's playing the terrible Wizards, and he's only 6,400. So, Nick, is the savings worth it, or do you prefer Oladipo?
Yeah, I know it's a big difference in price, but given the 2 options here, I think I have to go with Oladipo. He looked incredible on Sunday against the Knicks. Didn't really show many signs of rust in his first game back against Milwaukee, and he looked even better in that game. 57 DraftKings points, 5 threes, 5 steals, 8 rebounds, 7 assists. Kind of looks re-energized now after taking a few weeks off to tend to that knee. And of course, he gets a great matchup against Cleveland. But this is more to me about being down on Trae Young than it is about feeling great about Victor Oladipo. Young's down under 38% shooting on the season. He's down to 24.1% from 3. He's made multiple threes in just one of his last 7 games, which, given the way that he looked certainly at Oklahoma last year and even the way that he started the season, is a huge surprise. So he's been able to pile up assists, to kind of mitigate some of those struggles. But those have even been a little bit more hit or miss lately. Just hasn't been able to string together consecutive, positive performances in what seems like forever. So his low floor is what kind of scares me away from him tonight.
What do you think here, Jeff?
I disagree. Especially that $2,700 looking right there. Victor Oladipo, I think what works against him is his team is too good. They've won 7 straight, and he doesn't have to be that guy. So I just don't know if I trust him to deliver those points all the time, as opposed to Trae Young, who's going to be playing a track meet tonight against the Wizards. I mean, those two teams just play absolutely no defense. I expect him and Wall to be, even though I did take LeBron over Wall, I expect this to be a fast-paced game. And the Hawks are so bad that even a bad Trae Young will get his shot. So I would rather take Trae Young at 2,700 less and give him a chance at least.
All right, Jeff, Nikola Jokic and DeAndre Jordan, they're going to face off against each other tonight. Joker's 9,700, which is 2,900 more than Jordan. So which of these two would you prefer to roster?
Yeah, I just think it's a little too much. I'm going with the cheaper option here again, DeAndre Jordan. He's coming off a 23 rebound performance. I feel like DeAndre's settling in nicely with the Dallas Mavericks right now. It's a close one. But, in this situation where I'm going to try to save a little bit, and especially with them going up against each other, probably for rebounds, I'll take DeAndre Jordan here.
Who lands on your roster, Nick?
Yeah, this is a little bit tougher than I thought it would be. I think these players are priced pretty appropriately right now, given where they're at. But I think I'll go with Jokic. I mean, DeAndre is coming off of that 23 rebound game last time out, so certainly that's an attractive number when you look at the game logs. But I mean, Jokic has been unbelievable over this last, 7 to 10 games. He's got 2 60-plus fantasy point games, I should say, in his last 10. He's been up over 50 a few more times in there. Nuggets have been in a lot of close games, so he's playing a ton of minutes. That'll likely continue, as they deal with 3 starters being out. Both Denver and Dallas are in the top 10 when it comes to fantasy points allowed to opposing centers, almost identical rebounding rate, so it's kind of a wash there. But I do think, if you really want to look into it, maybe there's something that Denver starting Plumlee. I think he maybe offers a little bit more resistance underneath, a little bit more resistance on the glass than someone like Trey Lyles or even like Paul Millsap would. So, again, it's close, but I'll spend up and go with Jokic on the smaller slate.
Nick, D'Angelo Russell is coming off a nice 57-point performance against the Hawks. He's 8,100 tonight against the Lakers. Or you could take Jordan Clarkson, who's 6,100 and going to be without Kevin Love and Tristan Thompson on the floor. So which one of these is the better play?
I usually have a very strict never Jordan Clarkson under any circumstances policy. I kind of saw what I needed to see in last year's playoffs. But I mean, honestly, I'm kind of kidding. With the Pacers on the schedule, I'm still going to resist and go with D'Angelo Russell. I mean, Indiana, as we mentioned earlier, is quietly sneaking up. 7 straight wins. They're quietly sneaking up on OKC for the best defense in the league. I think they're like 0.4 points behind in terms of defensive rating right now. And the Cavs, of course, have the worst defense. They're a bottom 10 offense. We know all about that. Clarkson's basically had the green light these last few weeks. He's taken a ton of shots, which is, kind of right in his wheelhouse. But I think he's going to have a really tough time getting things going against this defense. I mean, during this Pacers 7-game winning streak, they've allowed opponents to score 100 points just twice. And both of those times, the opponent scored 101 points. So, you really don't see that, honestly, in the modern NBA very often. So I think that's kind of flown under the radar just how good they've been. And I think Cleveland could ultimately struggle to reach 90 points in this game, let alone 100. So to me, it's more about, not liking Jordan Clarkson in this matchup than it is liking D'Angelo Russell. But he's coming off of a big game on Sunday, so we'll see if he can replicate that going up against his old team in Brooklyn.
Jeff, agree, disagree?
So I think I'm reporting news here. Jordan Clarkson is not playing tonight, as of DK Live tweeting 40 minutes ago.
Wow.
Look at that.
Now, with all that said, D'Angelo Russell, I don't think he's worth that money coming off. He's too inconsistent in my mind to have an 8,100 point sort of game. But I will throw in with no Jordan Clarkson. You know who's sitting at 4,100 right now on the Cleveland Cavaliers bench? Is Matthew Dellavedova.
Let's do it.
So I'm going to throw out Delly there, take a chance on him with all those injuries with the Cavs. This might be Delly's night.
Ooh, I like it.
Well, we were testing you guys, and you passed, and this is
Yeah.
why we teased following DK Live and downloading the DK Live app at the top of the show.
So good job for having the DK Live app. We love that.
We
love
feel
that.
great about everything
Yeah.
happening right now. Okay, guys, slate approved pick time. Who's your lock of the night, Jeff?
I'm going with my guy. I talked about him last week, John Collins. He's just a double-double machine right now, averaging over 23 points and 12 rebounds in the month of December. The guy just, again, we talk about the Hawks being a pretty bad team. He's going to play. He's going to get points. Keep putting him out there.
Nick, it better not be Jordan Clarkson.
It is not Jordan Clarkson. It's Domantas Sabonis, 6,900, going up against those Cavaliers. Just touchdown and above. Cavs are terrible at defense. Their rebounding rate is actually decent on the season, but Tristan Thompson is the main reason for that. Obviously, he's out tonight. I think Sabonis has his way with the bigs on that second unit. And even if this does turn into a blowout, which, to some degree I expect it to, Sabonis isn't a guy that needs a ton of minutes to do his work. He's up to almost 33 DraftKings points per game in less than 25 minutes per game on the season.
Well, thanks, you two. We're going to talk game totals in the last block of the show with you guys. Plus, we got our NFL panel coming back for Chase or Fade.
But first, Pat Mayo joins the program to talk young quarterbacks. So listen up.
Knowing everything you know now, would you take Baker Mayfield, Deshaun Watson, Carson Wentz, or Jared Goff? Would it be Baker?
It might be Baker, man.
It might be Deshaun for me.
Deshaun would probably be 2. In my head, I was back and forth with Baker and Deshaun.
I think it would be Deshaun. He's so good.
He is so good. And you have to remember, too, I kind of treat him just as a rookie as well. Because he only played half the season last year.
5-6 games last year.
And it takes a little bit. I heard him in the pregame talking about how he felt like a rookie all year. He had jitters. He didn't feel comfortable with himself because of the knee. And now he says he feels like a seasoned vet. I was just joking around. But he's played 1 full season.
It's funny. You mentioned the Wentz injuries, how he's been injured for the past 5 years. I know that Watson blew out his knee last year, and it was non-contact that he blew it out. It was in practice. Remember, we were just sitting here.
It
scrolls. Deshaun Watson out for the year.
Devastating.
Then you have to make sure it has the blue check mark next to the guy's name, so you know people aren't f***ing with you. But with Wentz, he hurt his knee in practice. Now he has this back injury. I've just been impressed with the way that Watson's been able to hold up this year. The knee was clearly a problem for Wentz when he came back. He missed the first few weeks. Then even for the first few games that he was back, he couldn't plant properly.
Yeah.
I think he may have had this back problem for a while.
Yeah.
To be perfectly honest with you. That could be why he's been so bad. But with Watson, he had the same knee injury, no ramifications coming back from it week 1, and he has had the living kicked out of him this year, and he gets up every time. He had a bruised lung at one point, played anyway.
Yeah.
He's just, it strikes me, because Stafford got this rep early in his career too, that he was injury prone because he had 2 freak injuries, and I don't think he's missed a game since 2012.
Right. Yeah.
Watson feels kind of like that to me. You would think that eventually they stop running jet sweeps with him at the goal line where he gets crunched every play. Maybe get the poor guy an offensive line so he doesn't get sacked 9 times a game. But he just gets back up. It's like Cam. Cam gets back up every single time.
And Cam, I think, takes more hits than anybody.
He takes crushing hits.
And sometimes they're not even penalized. So Cam, as much as I kind of, point the finger at him being a baby and sore loser, he gets crushed and hit a ton. So I can understand why he'd be frustrated. But to your point about Watson, I don't think there was a quarterback that was hit more than him out of the first 8 weeks of the season. He was getting hit left, right, and center. And he's been moving around. He's been very mobile. Wentz hasn't moved around like he moved around last year.
No, the knee injury seems to have been far more impactful on Wentz than it was on Watson.
And Eagles reporters are saying they can tell he's not planning
making
on his
excuses
foot.
For Carson Wentz.
Sure, maybe it's
or
excuses.
the god Nick Foles.
But talking about how he's not planning on his foot. And also, there was some reports talking about Jordan Matthews said this when he left Philadelphia. He said that the training staff in Philly was shady, and they weren't truthful to a couple things.
Oh, they were untruthful. It wasn't just LaShawn McCoy wearing a stethoscope.
Yeah,
you're fine.
Yeah, and you know what? There's a lot of just hearsay going on right now with the Eagles and Carson Wentz. That to your point, what you just said. This was a back injury, something that he's had for a few games. This didn't just creep up. This was something that's been bothering him for a couple of weeks now, and all of a sudden it's a little bit more significant now. It seems like he doesn't need surgery, but I have some concerns with Carson Wentz. He would be 3 on that list. Goff would be 4.
If all you want for Christmas is for our NFL panel to chase or fade game spreads, boy, have I got some good news for you.
Wow, I really wish that's what my wife wanted for Christmas, and not those earrings.
That's not Paris.
Help me. All right, your Christmas wish is coming true if what Jessie just mentioned was on your Christmas wish list. Right now, though, Reed Fowler, Ian Harditz, they're here to help.
Yeah, it's a Christmas miracle, so let's begin.
Bless.
Reed, the Cowboys just got shut out by the Colts, but they're still 7-point favorites when the Bucs come to Dallas this weekend because, well, the Bucs. So chase or fade, Dallas covers. Oh no, we
can't hear you. There we go. I can hear you now.
There we go. I'm going to chase this. Look, Dallas after a loss is 4-1, 3-2 against the spread with a margin of victory of 7. Look, Dallas is a public team. They're at home, so I do think they get this bump. I don't think it should be this high. But look, they've been on a streak, right, in Tampa Bay with all of their foibles in the past. They don't really show up. And look at Jameis Winston, too, especially this guy on the road. Doesn't do that well, right? Over the last, outside of that first game in Atlanta, he really, his average, his DK fantasy points is in the single digits. And that's not what you want, right, going against this Dallas defense. Tampa Bay can score, but I just don't think that they get to this number. I think they really feature Zeke here. I think you can go back to Zeke, too. I know he disappointed quite a bit of people last week, but go back to him. I think he's in a bounce-back spot, so I say they do cover here.
Ian, do they cover?
Yeah, I'm chasing this one as well. Look, Cowboys can basically be the Buccaneers' kryptonite on defense. Since they lost Quan Alexander and Jack Sitchie, 2 of their starting linebackers, they've allowed 9 straight games with over 100 rushing yards to their opponents. So they've actually kind of been a better pass defense since they've kind of swapped out defensive coordinators, but still nowhere all that great. And look, we're only 1 week away from kind of having all these great conversations about Dak Prescott playing the best football of his career with Amari Cooper. Tough loss from last week, obviously, but kind of could see it coming after those back-to-back emotional wins over the Saints and Eagles. So I think it makes sense. Cowboys they need one more victory to clinch that playoff spot. So I think, they really want to get it done this week instead of worrying about going to New York in week 17. So good matchup, have everything to play for, giving the Cowboys.
Yeah, and Tampa Bay, too, away dogs, they're 3-3, and their margin of the margin of deficit is like close to 9. So these guys don't travel well at all.
Agreed.
Future home of Joe Flacco. Okay. Speaking of disappointing finishes, the Rams are coming off that loss to the Eagles where they were ginormous favorites. They're in a similar situation again this week against the Cardinals. Reed, chase or fade, the Rams end their 2-game losing streak and cover that 13.5-point spread.
Man, this is tough, especially with what Steve mentioned. I think he's looking for Todd Gurley right now. This is the guy who hasn't really shown up. Look, last game he showed up for us, right? He got injured. He went out. He didn't start the second half, but he came back and he did really well. But now you look at this team, right? 2 of 10 of their last games they've covered here. And you talk about these double digits. They're 1-2 against the spread in these double digit spreads. So this high-powered offense that we saw earlier not really showing up. And so you get the Cardinals, like we were mentioning earlier, not really playing for much other than to play spoiler, maybe to the Rams who want to clinch that number 1 spot over the Saints. Cards are 2-1 against the spread. When it's double digits, I'm going to say they don't cover here, and I like the Cards to cover this double-digit spread here.
What do you think, Ian? Do they cover? Even if maybe rookie John Kelly's in the backfield?
Yeah, I'm going to chase this one, say they cover. I think Reed brought up some good points, but we've seen these teams play 3 times now with Sean McVay, and it just has not been a little bit close. We've seen them go 34-0, 33-0, and 32-16 in the 3 meetings. Obviously, the version of the Rams we've seen these last few weeks hasn't been that same version that's really been beating down the Cardinals. But, we've seen Josh Rosen just have some truly bad performances and just the Byron Leftwich kind of hype is worn off about a month ago. Just hard to really see this Cardinals offense getting going against a Rams defense that, other than kind of that Eagles game, was starting to put things together once they got Talib back. So it's a lot of points here, but I just can't take that Josh Rosen offensive team right now.
Ian, the Chiefs are only 2.5-point favorites this week when they hit the road to face the Seahawks. So chase or fade that KC will cover.
Yeah, I'm chasing this again. Look, the only team to put up 30+ on the Seahawks this year is the Rams. And I think the Chiefs can offer you the next best things in terms of downfield firepower, the ability to kind of stretch that defense. Because, look, Seahawks deserve plenty of credit for keeping everything intact, losing their entire Legion of Boom. A lot of people, including myself, thought they were going to kind of fall apart this year. But the one spot where they're still kind of weak is at cornerback. And I think Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce are the last 2 guys you want to face, and that's your problem. And also, the Chiefs, they've been a little bit inconsistent rushing the ball ever since the whole Kareem Hunt thing. And look, KJ Wright hasn't been playing lately. Seahawks run defense also hasn't been that great. So I just think it's a bad matchup for the Seahawks. And primetime Tyreek Hill could help overcome some of that 12th man Sunday night hoopla. So give me the Chiefs.
Sweatometer going off. Reed, do you have a hot take like that one?
I want to fade this. I do think Seattle is one of the teams, and talk about parent trap type stuff here. The Jags and the Seahawks, I feel like they've switched places where we thought what the Jags are doing now is what was going to happen to the Seahawks, right? And their defense really playing well. And I think if you look to what Ian was saying, Tyreek Hill is an X factor. He's an amazing talent, but he gets a Seattle defense now that hasn't allowed a touchdown to opposing wide receivers in the slot. Now, you're not going to stop Tyreek Hill potentially. You just hope to contain the guy. But Seattle they're home favorites. This is one of the harder places to play, especially in December. I like the Seahawks here. Look, there are a lot of playoff implications. Obviously, the Seahawks want to stay ahead of going back in the hunt again, that wild card. They're in that 5th spot right now. And if Kansas City wins, they potentially, and the Chargers lose, they can potentially clinch that number 1 spot and a first-round bye. If Houston loses, there's a lot of scenarios here that both teams are still playing for. I think this is close, but that home field advantage, I think it goes to Seattle here.
Reed, believe it or not, Baker Mayfield and the Browns are technically still alive in the playoff hunt. 7-point favorites this week against the Bengals. Chase your fade. Cleveland covers.
Yeah, from one dangerous guy in Russ Wilson to another. I think they do cover here. Like, there's not a lot of – that was a bad joke. Not a lot of historical stats on after a win, how does Cleveland perform against the spread. So I'll go to Cincinnati side. They're 7-7 against the spread, but after a win for Cincinnati, they go down to 2-3 against the spread with a deficit of 6.6. So I just don't trust Cincinnati. I know you played a big game at home against the Raiders. You broke your losing streak. Not really a team that you should have lost to anyway in Oakland. So I think Cleveland, look, the margin of that victory last time when Baker went to Cincinnati, sort of the revenge game, was 50, and I think this is close to that as well. This team is playing really well, so I do think Cleveland covers.
Ian, what do you think? Can Cleveland and the Browns and Baker Mayfield, the Fighting Bakers, can they cover?
I think they'll win. I don't think they'll cover, though. I got the Bengals here. I mean, look, these guys played about a month ago, and it was only Browns -1. I know that game was in Cincinnati, but 6-point swing just, kind of go a couple hours north. I don't know if that's all warranted. That first time they played, Browns were coming off a bye. It was Driscoll's first start. Now, of course, we just saw Driscoll not be able to move the ball really through the air against the Raiders, so I'm not sure those 4 additional starts have done him all that much good. But Joe Mixon in the run game have been moving lately. The Browns have been more of a run funnel defense and playing better against the pass. So I just think the line's a little bit too high, and I'll take the Bengals +7, although I might have to put in my wallet on this one.
So many hot takes. You guys have definitely earned a break. Please don't go far, though. We've still got Price Check with you.
All right, but first we're bringing in the ice-cold Ben Zwyman to talk hockey. BRB.
It's time for your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. I'm Taryn Azak, previewing tonight's NBA Showdown contest as the 15-13 Dallas Mavs face the 20-9 Denver Nuggets. The Mavs have lost 2 in a row, while Denver has a chance to add to their 3-game winning streak tonight. Dallas will look to their teen superstar, Luka Doncic, to help turn the losing streak right around. The Slovenian leads Dallas in scoring at 18.2 per game and is coming off a 28-point, 9-assist game in a loss to Sacramento over the weekend. The Nuggets have been hot, but are missing 3 starters and 1 key reserve to injuries tonight. Will Barton, Paul Millsap, and Gary Harris all will not suit up, so look for them to rely on center Nikola Jokic and guard Jamal Murray to lead the way. Torrey Craig has started the last 2 games in place of Harris, and he has put up 2 biggest point totals of the season. He could be in line for another start and will only cost you $3,800. The Mavericks are only 2-10 on the road this season, so they will be put to the test against the top seed in the West tonight.
The man, the myth, the slate-breaking legend, Ben Zwyman of DK Live is here to splurge or save with us in the NHL. Yeah, double fist bump, baby. Let's see it.
Guys.
And Ben's intros just keep getting better. So you're ready. We're ready. Let's go. Connor McDavid's the top center tonight, and he ain't cheap. He'll run you 8,200 against the Blues, but we've got a cheaper pick with Dylan Larkin, who's going against Carter Hart, who's making his NHL debut in goal for the Flyers.
Okay.
Larkin's only $6K. Ben, are you splurging or saving here?
This is a tough one, guys. I'm going to be honest with you. You know I love Dylan Larkin. I love me some Dylan Larkin. So, yeah, I think I'm saving in this spot.
Ooh.
Larkin's been incredibly consistent over his past 7 games, at least 3.5 DK fantasy points. Topping out at 9 points, so he's got a good ceiling. The Flyers have been sort of a disaster this season. They just fired their coach, Dave Haxtell. Rookie goalie in net, Carter Hart, NHL debut. He's probably the best goalie prospect in the NHL, but again, NHL debut. It's big pressure spot for him. I think the Red Wings will go a little low owned. A lot of people are on the Flyers tonight. McDavid, great spot. I mean, what more can I say? His price is very high, though, for an 11-game slate. It's a lot of salary to invest in. So I think you can look elsewhere. You can pay down at center a lot. John Tavares is 7,100. There are a lot of good options out there. So yeah, I'm going to save and go with Larkin.
What about those wings, Benjamin? Nikita Kucherov, the priciest at 7,900 against the Canucks, or you could take Zach Parise, who's only 6,000. He's facing the Sharks' Martin Jones, who was yanked from his last game after allowing 3 goals on 4 shots. You want to splurge or save?
Yeah, I'm going to save again. I'm just all about saving today. Kucherov, sort of in a slump a little bit. He's still putting up points, but not really high ceiling games. The matchup on paper looks really good against the Canucks, but the Canucks have actually been pretty good in December. 5-2-1. They've allowed 18 goals in 8 games, which is very good. On the other hand, Parise and the Wild second line with Charlie Coyle and Nino Niederreiter have been really good. 8 goals and 15 points in the past 7 games. That's pretty good. Parise is probably going to go low owned. Again, 11-game slate. You're going to have to find those values. Find the low-owned guys. So I really like Parise and the Wild. Like you said, Martin Jones has been pretty bad in net. The Sharks are on the road. The Sharks are a much better home team. So yeah, Parise and that second line for the Wild I'm looking at.
All right, leading the way for defensemen is Mark Giordano at 6,800 against the Stars. Or you could go Darnell Nurse, who has at least 6 fantasy points in 3 of his last 4 games. Do you want to splurge or save at defenseman?
Hey, surprise, surprise, we're saving again, you guys. Darnell Nurse. I've been preaching Darnell Nurse ever since Clefbaum went down. You got to keep riding him. I don't know why his price hasn't gone up. It's still 5,700. He's played at least 27 minutes in each of the 4 games since Clefbaum went down. His floor is just too high, and this isn't even taking into account the matchup at home against the Blues, who have been widely inconsistent on defense. No Alex Pietrangelo for them. As far as Giordano is concerned, I think his price is pretty high at 6,800. The Flames are in an okay spot against the Stars, but that game to me seems like a spot where there's not going to be as many goals. And if you're paying up 6,800 for a defenseman, he better perform. I think there are better options, and you can pay down a little bit less for guys like Roman Josi of the Preds and Morgan Riley of the Maple Leafs. Those are better spots that you're going to save a little bit more if you're trying to spend up a little bit in the 6K range on defense. So yeah, Nurse is chalk. You got to ride him.
All right, finally, between the pipes, Carter Hutton will cost you 8,200 against the Panthers, or if you feel like saving some cash, could take Alexander Georgiev, who's 7,400 against the pitiful Ducks offense. So you know the drill, Ben.
Hey, 4 for 4, baby. You guessed it. We're saving again.
Oh, wow.
Not to say that I don't like Carter Hutton, though. We'll get to him in a second. Georgiev has been pretty good at home this season for the Rangers. 2-1-0, 9.36 save percentage, and a small sample size. The Ducks are on the second of a road back-to-back. We may see Chad Johnson, Ocho Cinco for the Ducks tonight in net. Chad Johnson's been very bad this season. 3.55 goals against average, 8.84 save percentage in 10 games for the Blues before he was claimed by Anaheim. The numbers are bad. It's not a bad spot for Hutton if we're talking spend up. The Panthers pepper a lot of shots on net. So yeah, I mean, I'm still saving for Georgiev. He'll be chalky, but I think on an 11-game slate, you sort of have to save on goaltender and spend elsewhere.
All right, before we let you go, we need your slate approved pick. Doesn't have to be a guy we talked about, Ben, but who's your lock for tonight?
I'm looking at Patrick Laine of the Winnipeg Jets against the Kings on the road. Laine's price is down to 6,800. It was up at 7,500 5 games ago. That was when the Jets started their 5-game win streak. The Jets have at least 4 goals in each of those games on the streak. The Kings are the worst team in the league, 11, 20, and 3. This seems like a spot where the Jets are just going to beat up on a bad team on the road. Again, price point for Laine is incredible. We know what his ceiling is. We know he can get a hat trick at any game. I think at 6,800, great price. I'm looking at Laine. You can easily stack him too with line mates Kyle Connor at 5,500 and center Brian Little at 3,800. So yeah, Laine, lock him in.
Awesome stuff, Benjamin. We miss you already.
Yeah, but the sweat is still rolling. We got NFL price check for Week 16 next.
Talking some baseball in this DraftKings Fantasy Flash. I'm Brendan Glasheen. The Astros inked former Indian Michael Brantley to a 2-year, $32 million contract Monday night. Jeff Passan of Yahoo Sports reported the agreement and added this. Brantley's versatility and bat-to-ball ability appealed to the Astros, who have a team full of those types. The plan is for him to rotate among left field, first base, and DH. So right away, the takeaway is Brantley will hold a ton of value in your DK lineups next season. You love the versatility. The Stros seem to have their mind set on maneuvering the lineup to fit Brantley in there. A 3-time All-Star, he played in 143 games for the Indians in 2018, the most since his 2014 campaign when he finished third in the American League MVP voting. So while he's had injury-riddled seasons in the past, he played 90 games in 2017, it's a good sign he dressed up close to the entire 162 last year. Also, big component to this signing, Houston desperately needed a left-handed bat. Brantley is just that, as he joins only Josh Reddick and Tony Kemp as lefty sticks on the squad. Nice pickup for the Astros, who are poised for a return to the World Series.
For the final time tonight, let's bring in our NFL panel. DK Live duo Reed Fowler and Steve Buchanan, plus the one and only Ian Hartitz of the Action Network.
Price check is the name of the game, boys. We give you a player and their salary, and you tell us if they're priced right for Week 16. Simple enough.
So, Reed, Josh Allen has been on a roll with at least 19 fantasy points in 4 straight games. What? He's facing the Pats this week. Do you like this play, considering he's only 5,800?
Man, I can't figure out Josh Allen for the life of me, so I'm going to say no. I mean, right above him, right? You find better quarterbacks, like he already screws up what I'm about to say. But look at the Patriots, right? They're the 8th best for running backs. They have the 8th most rushing yards to quarterbacks. But when you look at Bill Belichick and these guys, although their defense hasn't been good, they've been able to shut down number 1 players on the opposing side. Like the Patriots, especially too, against the Bills, winners of 8 of the last 10 matchups, and at home. If this was in Buffalo, I'd like it a little bit more, but at home, I just can't trust Josh Allen as the only person on that team really that can win a game. So I don't like it. I think there's other guys to save. He'd be the cheapest I'd go to in cash if I were to use him, but that's about it.
Steve, I saw your face while Reed was talking. Go ahead.
Yeah, as somebody who watches the Patriots, I can tell you this Patriots defense is #trash. Just like we expected, Allen wasn't able to rush much against this Lions team, and that made him a bad play last week. Still scored 19.7 DK fantasy points despite only rushing for about, I think it was 9 yards. It wasn't much at all, whatever it was, sorry. But he's just getting it done. I mean, he has a much more favorable matchup this week against the Patriots, and he's still very much in play for me at 5,800. I love pairing him last week with Isaiah McKenzie. I'm going to do so again this week. As I keep hammering home, the Patriots cannot defend against receivers coming out of the slot. It is a weak spot for them. Patriots just can't tackle at this point, so I don't see as Allen being in a bad place this week, so I like him here.
Ian, what do you think? Josh Allen?
Nah, I guess it's a tough spot for Josh to keep this going. I mean, going into Foxborough, they're only implied for 16 points. I mean, I know the Patriots have had their ups and downs on defense, but it's been a lot of downs. That's fine, but I just don't trust Robert Foster, Zay Jones, and Isaiah McKenzie to be the guys to really exploit Stephon Gilmore and Jason McCourty. I mean, we saw Antonio Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster each wind up with less than 50 receiving yards, and I don't really trust Josh Allen to kind of be the guy to all of a sudden make the offense's 4th and 5th options be the guys to beat the Patriots. So I'm fine going down $100 to Dak Prescott. I mean, I mentioned this earlier. Again, guy was playing the best football pretty much of his career all up until one bad game last week. So gives you a similar rushing floor, if not quite as high as Allen's, but then you at least have kind of the better matchup overall at home. So I'm fine going down 100 to Dak.
Another week when Tom Brady is just $100 more expensive than Josh Allen.
Who would have seen the day?
I know, right? All right, well, Marlon Mack was a beast last week against the Cowboys, put up 29.9 fantasy points to be exact. That's probably why his price jumped $1,000 to $5,500 when he faces the Giants. Steven, would you still consider him a steal at this price?
I mean, I was shocked at how well he did last week. I mean, Dallas's run defense has been fantastic this year, even without Sean Lee in the lineup. But now he's got a much more favorable matchup against the Giants. And yeah, he absolutely has to be back on the radar. I mean, the Giants have allowed the 7th most fantasy points to opposing running backs this season, allowing an average of 104 rushing yards per game, 12 rushing touchdowns. I mean, for this matchup, he feels pretty underpriced, if anything. I mean, prior to that game against Dallas, he was just doing absolutely nothing on the ground for about 3 straight weeks. So I feel like his salary is still kind of catching up for that. I mean, if he had been producing like he was earlier in the year, he'd be priced much higher than he is now. So I feel like, yeah, this is a really good price for him in a much more favorable matchup than it was last week. And we all saw what he did last week. So yeah, he's in a wonderful spot this week.
Ian, how big of a steal is Marlon Mack at $5,500 facing the Giants at home?
Huge. I mean, I'm echoing most of what Steve just said here, but yeah, Giants, they got rid of Damon Harrison. They've allowed 115 or more rushing yards in all but one game since then. And then, yeah, I was surprised how well Mack did against the Cowboys as well. You look a little closer, and they got their starting center, Ryan Kelly, back last week. He was gone the 3 previous weeks, and Mack was only averaging 3.9 yards per carry. But in 7 games with Kelly, he's averaging 5.1 yards per carry. So home favorite. I mean, the Colts, we see there's like one clip every week of Quentin Nelson just road paving some poor defensive lineman. And I don't think the Giants have anyone that can really get in their way this week. So give me all the Marlon Mack. And if that means also, I mean, he could be a contrarian play if Aaron Rodgers ends up playing because Jamal Williams is right there and you figure he'll be chalky as well. So I'm interested to see how those ownership percentages work out later in the week.
Reed, it's the most expensive Mack has been since he was $5,500 back in Week 12 against Miami. He only had 11 DK fantasy points then, but you feel like he delivers a little more than that this time against the Giants?
Yeah, this one's tough because the price tag does jump out right $1K, and that just kind of gives you pause. But like these guys mentioned, that matchup is fantastic against the Giants, right? Sand Snacks Harrison. But what kind of drew me to this and then potentially looking at other options is that he out-touched his average by 15 that last week as opposed to the weeks that when he came back from those injuries. And right, but after those 2 big games that he had when he came back from those injuries, he averaged less than 10 DK fantasy points. And so now you get this big game in this plus matchup. Of course, his price tag is going to go up. And Ian's right. If Aaron Rodgers does play, I think Jamal Williams does become chalk. And so I'd much rather like him in there. I mean, your boy Leonard Fournette is right above him at $500 more. He gets a matchup that is nice. You like how he didn't perform last week. That ownership might be low against a Miami defense that, again, is not good against the run. I think if you want savings, Mac is okay for that. But for me, I'm looking potentially elsewhere. I'm not going to have a ton of ownership with Marlon Mack just because those numbers are so astronomically high above what he's averaged this entire season.
Hey, Reed, Juju was held to 8 DK fantasy points by the Pats last week. Despite that bad performance, he's still $8,000 against the Saints this week. So is he overpriced?
No way. I mean, this guy is in a fantastic spot. I know Steve's going to talk about the secondary, especially the slot receivers for New Orleans, so I'll give that up to him. But look, 11.5 targets over the last 5, and he put up 40 points. 36 points against like all AFC West teams. So maybe that's just the angle that he loves. This guy is fantastic. One of the better pickups in season long that you got in the later rounds, maybe 5th, 6th round. And this guy's, I'm going to play him at any price for that matter because of what he's shown that his ceiling is. He's fantastic. He gets a great matchup. And I'll just leave it at that and let Steve handle the rest.
Steve, go ahead.
You should have trolled everybody and went right to Ian. I was surprised how Juju and really that whole Steelers offense didn't produce against that Patriots defense because they're trash. But what was more encouraging, though, is that he was back to playing more than half his snaps out of the slot. Over the past few weeks, he was playing more on the outside, more out of the slot, which I was surprised about because it really wasn't really working in his favor. But when he is in the slot this week, like Reed mentioned, he's going up against P.J. Williams, and that's arguably one of the best matchups they're going to have this week. According to Pro Football Focus, Williams is ranked 106th out of 116 ranked cornerbacks in the league. If you don't understand, that's really bad. So, I mean, you have to run them back out here this week. It doesn't matter what he did last week. Even in a bad game, he still had over 10 targets. He's still seeing 31 targets over the last 3 weeks. So him doing bad wasn't because of lack of production or lack of opportunities. It just didn't work out. Everybody just seemed to be out of sync in that game last week. So this is absolutely a spot where you put him back in your lineup.
Ian, do you agree or do you think Juju's overpriced?
Nah, these guys are on it. And look, I mean, we're in week 16 now. So unless you're the Patriots, really, we shouldn't be expecting any big coverage changes. And yeah, PJ Williams, massive liability, has been all season. Marshawn Lattimore and Eli Apple have only spent 6 and 7% of their snaps in the slot all season. So yeah, maybe a high leverage third down here or there. It'll be a tougher matchup for Juju, but he's capable of beating both those guys anyway. I mean, he's awesome. The one thing I would caution, especially just anyone playing DFS, AB and Juju have a minus 0.54 correlation, their DraftKings points, going back to week 1 of last season. Basically, that just means one of them does really well, the other guy doesn't do very well. So we haven't seen too many weeks where both those guys blow up. So I would not be stacking them together.
All right, George Kittle is the highest priced tight end on the main slate this week at 6,000, had 8 DK fantasy points following that 37-point outburst in week 14. Reed, how fair of a price is this against the Bears for Kittle?
Yeah, I don't like it that much. Again, I sort of take the approach of either, again, spending up on this if it's a good matchup, but really spending down at tight end. There's some spots, some leverage spots that I like a little bit more cheaper. Obviously, George Kittle gets the Bears, who are 11th worst for tight ends. Again, that's not too bad, but again, there's just value to be had. If you want to pay out for guys like Juju, go back to Ezekiel Elliott at 9,000. Some of these other high-priced plays, I think George Kittle is someone that I'm going to be fading. Look, David Njoku, Vance McDonald are in better spots, obviously cheaper than Kittle. Kittle's, again, one of the stories, right? Again, in season long, or if you're playing DFS, who's been a great ad, and he is the target. Nick Mullins, San Francisco 49ers have been playing better than what we expected after every single one of their starters essentially got injured or just aren't playing. I just like the player, but just not the matchup this week.
Steve, you prefer George Kittle, or would you rather go elsewhere in the tight end position?
No, and it's amazing that people are already talking down about Kittle. He had a bad matchup last week, and everyone's like, "Yo, you still got to play Kittle." No, you don't. I mean, the Seahawks are great against tight ends, and we saw that last week. And now he's going against the Bears. Everyone's like, "Oh, yeah, we definitely shouldn't play Kittle this week." I mean, look, he had 8.1 DK fantasy points last week. He's only caught 3 of his 8 targets for 51 yards. The Bears are allowing an average of 10 DraftKings points per game this year. I feel like this is a week where you got to pay down for tight end. Austin Hooper looks like in a really good bounce back spot this week. Blake Jarwin, 3,000 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is enticing as well. If Swain is still out. 14 targets in the last 2 weeks for Jarwin. This is just a week where you want to go down at tight end. Don't get all fancy again just because it's George Kittle. Who cares? The matchup isn't good, so forget it.
All right, where do you sit on this one, Ian?
I do think in general, these tight ends that are basically their team's number 1 receivers are a little bit undervalued. I mean, how many times do you see just wide receiver ones at 6,000 or lower? But yeah, like if you're going to pay up this week, just go down $100 to Zach Ertz. I understand he's had worse splits without Wentz under center, but I mean, we still saw him and Foles do plenty in the playoff run last year. And look, he's facing Houston, who this is the good matchup we would want to target. They're 29th in DVOA against tight ends this year. I mean, again, Ertz is that undisputed number 1 receiver in Philly, even if Alshon's a little more involved with Foles under center. So, yeah, I mean, maybe Eddie Jackson will be out for the Bears, which would obviously help Kittle's flow. But, I mean, it's just a tough time targeting anyone in the pass game versus the league's best defense.
I just enjoy the conversations that Bukes has with himself when he's answering these questions. It's fantastic.
He doesn't.
It's the only one that makes any sense.
He does answer his own questions quite often.
Yeah,
yes, well, I love it.
I can say you 3 definitely returned value per usual. So now you're free to go. Not you, Emerson. We still have one more segment with our NBA panel. Don't go anywhere.
Okay, sorry.
Hey, it's Brendan Glasheen in with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. Melvin Gordon's really sorry he couldn't come through and help your lineups the last 3 weeks. How nice of him. He'll make an effort to make it up to all of you. Gordon expected to return from a sprained knee Saturday night when the Chargers host the Ravens. Baltimore's defense has been stellar. It leads the NFL in yards and points allowed, plus it ranks 3rd against the run. Gordon said Monday, quote, "It's going to be tough, but we're going to go out there and knock off some rust and get myself ready for the playoffs," end quote. He sounds anxious to get back out there. LA head coach Anthony Lynn admitted the star running back was close to playing last Thursday versus the Chiefs. With Austin Eckler still in concussion protocol, Gordon will slide into his typical premier role should he play. But don't forget rookie Justin Jackson, who proved last week he is a worthy relief option. Gordon still comes at a hefty price despite being out close to a month. He's the most expensive player in the DraftKings Showdown Captain Contest. Would you pay that much for someone to just shake off the rust? That's a tough sell. We'll have to monitor Gordon's practice participation as the week rolls on.
Jeff Eisenband. Are our mics on now?
Yeah, it's
Thank
our
you,
final
Aiden.
segment of the show, guys.
Repeat everything
so
I
let's
just
play
said.
over under. We don't pretend to be the experts here. So
Great.
let's welcome in our panel.
Nick Whalen of RotoWire, DFS expert. That would be Jeff Eisenband. Hey guys, how's it going? Go
We're
ahead.
playing over under, guys. So the Lakers head to Brooklyn to face the Nets tonight. The line for this one set at 227.5. Jeff, do you see this one going over or under that mark?
Yeah, I think it's going over. It's slightly above the averages for these teams, but the way that both of them are playing, I mean, I'm surprised that the Lakers are scoring the way that they are. With an older LeBron James team, but they are. And the Nets coming off a 144-point performance. I just like them to keep up this pace. They have a 5-game winning streak going. They're going to try to dictate this and play fast.
227.5. Nick, over under.
I'm going the same way. This is a tough one, but Lakers coming off of an off day on Monday. They had a back-to-back over the weekend. I think they bounced back after it was a pretty ugly loss to Washington on Sunday. They're the third fastest-paced team in the league. Nets are actually a bottom 10 defense, but they've been winning. I think they've won 5 straight, winning with their offense. They're allowing over 120 points per game over those last 3 wins, but they've won them all. They're coming off a season-high 144 on Sunday. I think this is a close game that ends up going over.
The Pacers will try to extend their win streak to 8 games when they host the Cavs tonight. Nick, you like this game to go over or under 206.5?
You know, we talked about this game a little bit in the last segment. I'm going to go under 206. I know that's a low number. If it goes over, I think it's because, Indiana just completely blows the doors off Cleveland and it's something like, 120 to 92 or something like that. But I think it'll be closer to that 206 number. I'm certainly not betting against the Pacers defense like that. And like I said before, this is a team that has not allowed more than 101 points over the last 7 games. I don't think the Cavs are the team that's suddenly going to kind of end that streak for them.
Jeff, where are you going on this total here?
Although the Cavs are absolute trash, 206 in the modern NBA, where every team is averaging at least 101 points a game, to me, that's too low. So I'm going over with that. Like we said, we talked about the Pacers potentially blowing out the Cavs. I think there's going to be, a significant amount of open space. The Pacers do have a strong defense, but I can't bet under 206 in the modern NBA.
Okay, fair enough. Jeff, the best team in the West, the Nuggets will host the Mavs tonight.
That
So
sounds
is this
weird.
game? Oh, I know it does sound weird. Going over or under 208.5.
It's the same thing to me. This number is just too low. Yes, these two teams strong defensively, but I just can't. 208.5 just seems low, especially in what should be a back and forth game, as we mentioned, between two strong teams. I don't see it being that low. I'm going over 208.5.
Nick, you going over too?
Yeah, I am. I feel the same way. I mean, there are really only, to me, a handful of defenses that I really consider, when you see a number like this, and that's, OKC, Boston, certainly Indiana's in that mix. But I think this goes over. Both these teams, I guess, if you want to make a case, have kind of had some weird losses lately that maybe scare you away. Dallas only put up 89 against the Suns last week. Denver had a game where they only got to 98 against the Hawks like a week and a half ago. So you can point to some examples, but for the most part, they've been able to take care of business. I think this is a game that's probably played at maybe in the low 110, something like 114, 110. So I think it goes over.
All right, finally, a couple teams that really just aren't that great right now. The Wizards and Hawks have the highest projected total, though, on tonight's slate, 238. Nick, you like the over or the under?
Well, we got 2 top 7 teams in pace, 2 bottom 4 defenses, 2 teams that rank in the top 12 in three-point attempts, and 2 teams that give up a ton of free throws to opponents. So I'm going to go over. I think Washington wins this game probably pretty easily. And I think it looks similar to when these teams met back on December 5th. That was a Washington win, 131 to 117.
Jeff, we got 45 seconds. Take it away.
I'm going under 2 just ridiculously unpredictable teams in my mind. Nick mentioned the Hawks giving up, 98 points at one point. They gave up 144 this past weekend. Something's got to give. That number to me is just way too high for 2 teams that just can't always seem to score and can't win games.
Guys, that's our show. I'm Jessie. He's Emerson. You've been watching The Sweat. We'll be back tomorrow at 6 everywhere, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Tune in.
Okay. Will do. Okay. Will do.
And a goodbye.